We don't really need clothes on the internet. So I think maybe digital fashion would open up a lot of well, answer those questions like what is fashion? What's it for if not utilitarian? If it's solely for to socialize, to communicate, as Artür said, like what people want to communicate. I think it's an extension of communication.
So I feel like nowadays having like the metaverse and all these fashion companies trying to involve themselves more realistically into something that was already there is just something that was about to happen. It's just that I think that in the early like 2010, it was not ready and it was not the purpose and nobody would have understood it.
I think on top of all of that, saying what you want to do, because words are powerful. So if you know you are a creative director but you want to be an artist, call yourself an artist when people ask what you're up to and what you do, and that's really like, you know, what then you'll become.
Hi everyone, I am excited to present another fun episode of NEWFORUM. NEWFORUM is a community podcast inviting purpose-driven creators, visionaries, developers, and investors to spark accessible conversations on the topics of crypto, the metaverse, NFT, and everything Web3. Today, I'm quite honored to have some of the most incredible and bright creatives and trendsetters in the creative field, hands down. I've got Artür, who is an entrepreneur and owner of BAFP Media. And I also have the amazing Gillen, who is a photographer and creative director. And of course, Preston Zeng, who is a creative director, actor, model, and creative producer. I am really glad, guys, that we could make this happen, because figuring out the time zones was like, yeah, it wasn't easy, but we eventually made it happen. I think it would be awesome if you guys could introduce yourselves further. Maybe we can start with Clare and then Preston, then Artu.
Hi, I'm Clare. Nice to see you. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I live in Los Angeles. I work as a creative director and photographer, and have been working mostly in music over the last few years, but have become more interested in fashion and fine art more recently, and have been kind of dabbling in those worlds more so. I'm from Philadelphia, and I have my hands in a lot of different pots, which keeps me busy and fulfilled. So thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Preston?
Hey everyone, it's Preston. I'm just kind of, one could say, just a digital avatar. I experiment with meta personas and playing on the internet, basically, and formats. And I've just spent the last few years just exploring different markets and perspectives, whether it's like political or geopolitical or economic models out there, and seeing how we could all communicate on this thing called the internet and what that means, and you know what kind of content that creates and how we take information in. Right now, I'm visiting family in Northwest Arkansas, which is a world away where I was for 3 years ago, which was in the Republic of Georgia. So I'm kind of getting a full panoramic point of view on how we take in, you know, the internet.
Thank you for joining us, and Artür.
So, hi everyone. It's a very big honor to be back on one other episode. I'm Arthur and I own BAFP Medias and also BAFP Channel, which all surrounds around the way I perceive fashion and my vision through it. And all the creatives that I've worked with are also like sharing with me this type of vision where fashion has a certain impact on our societies and how we move and motion with it. So I will be very pleased to dig into the topics of today.
Exciting. Yeah. So my first question for everyone is, why is fashion important, and how does fashion influence culture? Or would you say that culture changes fashion? Maybe we can start with you, Artür, and then Preston and Clare.
Fashion is probably one of the first most underestimated medium ever created, because people always like think that clothing is just about looking cute and just working out and making some people like jealous about the outfit. No, when you actually dress up, you're actually choosing to be perceived and understood such as this outfit makes you feel. So anytime you actually pick a character, you're not just choosing it because you like this character. You're choosing it in a way that you want to communicate to the other people what you actually either been through, either want to say, or either feeling right now. So for this, fashion and the people, fashion and culture will always be like this. And it's like this for ages and ages and ages, from ancient Greek, from Egypt, from king and queens, from nowadays, from influencers even. The clothing have a certain place that cannot be taken off from the culture and the importance that it has as a medium of communication.
I would have to agree with Artür on that. I think besides being utilitarian, we're the only animals that wear clothes, for the weather or for the environment. And somehow we've innovated on that and used clothing as a social signifiers, and those, what motivates those social signifiers is culture. And if once we put it into an industry, I definitely think culture affects fashion, but I think fashion also mines culture and sells it back to them. It's a symbiotic relationship. At the basis, that's supposed to be something utilitarian. And when you think about like early man and how we were tribal and we had to have social hierarchies, or that person's a hunter, that person's a chief, that person is the medicine man. We're seeing this still happens when people have brand, when they affiliate themselves with brands, or brand alignment and all that stuff. So I think it's a complicated symbiotic relationship that's as old as time.
Yeah, totally. Claire, anything stood out for you?
No, I mean they said it. I think that it's fascinating to examine kind of from an anthropological lens and see it as a feedback loop, right? That both
Exactly.
informs culture and vice versa. Culture informs fashion, and we've gotten to see that unfold in our lifetimes, which has been fascinating. There's nothing more fun than looking at an old picture of yourself and being like, oh my God, what was I wearing? Or what was that identity crisis? I remember in middle school being like, today I'm going to be Hot Topic and wear plaid with hardware and ripped, a ripped t-shirt. And tomorrow I'm going to cosplay being a Valley girl. So I think that there's really something really beautiful about fashion that lends itself to fantasy in a way that I haven't really appreciated until recently in my life. I think I always had a almost kind of negative feeling around it because it is so class-based. To me, it's always been a marker of hierarchy and class. I always had this thing where, because I didn't have access to it as a young person, there wasn't an Abercrombie at my mall, and I went to a school where I showed up and everyone had the same kind of social uniform on, and that made me feel like an outcast. It also sort of led me to develop my own relationship to vintage clothing in this way, that I was like, okay, well, what can I do that I'm still going to be proud of and that's going to make me feel my best self, right? And now that's progressed into this kind of realization that for a lot of people it allows them to dream and to create and to really exist in the fantasy, and what is life without fantasy? So it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing to me.
Yeah, totally. And so would you say that digital fashion is a natural evolution of fashion itself? Like it was going to happen anyways, because most of the time people say, well, post-COVID, right? That was a time when people started at least getting more, digital, right? So what are your views on that? Because we can't escape all these like amazing images on our Instagram, right? Like you see people posing with filters, and how do you guys have any in terms of like Preston, you talked about being a digital persona and you're all creators, and so what do you think about that? And also, how will digital fashion impact your work as creative directors, and what are the benefits, you'd say?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I like to play with is, I think, are ones, digital like presence is very much edited and curated. And, an extreme case would be at catfishing, even like scammers, that, they feed into this type of persona or personality that, that's familiar, except it's in the digital space. So I think that next level, whether it's the metaverse or whatever you want to call it, people will present themselves in, excuse the pun, in a fashion that they would want to be perceived as we wear clothes in real life. So, like, what are you going to wear to the metaverse? And if you could customize it, filter it, and make it your ideal you, that what you want to present to the world, I think it opens up a lot of opportunity for people to be creative. And I think we'll see lots of interesting things in terms of design and art direction. I think it's going to be exciting.
I'm just curious, like, I understand digital fashion, but I don't fully understand the utility of, it's just so niche, and I'm curious what you guys think. It's sort of just like, you have to be participating as an avatar or gaming or have an avatar to be able to use digital fashion. Or I guess taking a step back, I'm an avatar on Instagram, potentially sharing my identity. So I guess that's one application of digital fashion. Where do you guys see it being used?
I think Claire hit on the interesting thing, because normally in real life we wear clothes for utilitarian reasons. We don't necessarily need clothes on the internet. I think we all know, OnlyFans, we don't really need clothes on the internet. So I think maybe digital fashion would open up a lot of answer those questions, like what is fashion? What's it for if not utilitarian? If it's solely for to socialize, to communicate, as Artür said, like what people want to communicate. I think it's an extension of communication. In terms of it as an industry, I don't know what that means. Is there going to be I got invited to some Grimes Digital Fashion Week. I don't know. Did you guys attend it? I didn't really understand what that was going at. And maybe that's the question that needs to be answered.
I think that the digital fashion being here, even before anybody started talking about any Web3 or Metaverse, because I remember me as a young kid going on this website called Stardoll, and you would pick the outfit of the people that you would like that appeared on their movie, and you would have to actually pay to unlock these amazing dresses that was in that movie. And by just picking already the artist that you wanted and this outfit that you wanted, you were trying to create already a sort of universe that you can actually play with. But above this Stardoll system, there was also The Sims. Everybody's been playing to The Sims, and everybody decided to dress up that way. Even though the wardrobe was not that big, we still had this choice of choosing how to build an image that we would every day wake up, because these were everyday's games. So you would wake up to it and make them interact, make them do this, make them do that, dress them like this. And even though it doesn't have a very in real life impact time, it's still impactful in terms of time that you accord to it. So I feel nowadays having the metaverse and all these fashion companies trying to involve themselves more realistically into something that was already there is just something that was about to happen. It's just that I think that in the early 2010, it was not ready, and it was not the purpose, and nobody would have understood it. It was kind of too early. But I think that The Sims or Stardoll and all of these websites, even abo.com, I don't know if everybody remember, but abo, it was something where you would create a world and connect with the people in a little city. All these little things were just the premise of what the metaverse is now. And I think that now that the extent that it has taken is either very serious or either very so ridiculous that it has become serious.
Those are really great points. And I think that's part of the reasons why I asked if digital fashion is a natural evolution of fashion itself, because we already saw some of these things happening in earlier on. And in terms of utility, I think one of the most common uses would be filters for social media. And then it takes me to the sustainability concept, right? Because you get to save more fabrics, and most of the time people are just buying clothes not because they really need it, sort of like what Preston said, it's because they want to represent themselves, tell a story, express themselves. And so they go buying like a bunch of things, and we know what happens, in that sense. And so if we have these filters, you don't have to go buying these physical things. You can just have the filter on and express yourself however you want. And so I think that's one of the big, in terms of utility, I think that's one of the ones that I would say is sort of like catching on. And of course, like you can wear it, put it on your avatars in terms of the metaverse. So like there's a lot, but I feel like it's still early and it's still unfolding.
Like as what Artür said, that like, is it a joke? What's going on? How is it affecting culture and all that stuff? It's like I've seen people look like, I don't know if you guys remember Second Life, but it was kind of a gamified platform back in like the late 2000s. And you could dress yourself, order pizza and all that stuff and communicate with people in like this virtual world. And I'm just like looking at TikTok, and a lot of what I'm seeing on the runway too looks like Metaverse as an aesthetic, and so I feel like it's kind of going back and forth. I think fashion mines all culture, even cultures that haven't even been created yet, like the Metaverse. You know what I mean? Right now, it's being treated kind of as a fantasy or as a talking point, but it's definitely like on the back of everyone's minds on, how does that work? Because we don't all know about technology, okay? And we're all not like into culture, and we're all not into fashion. But, your average person out there has heard of it, at least, and even Facebook and Instagram have branded themselves Meta. So I'm excited to see what people are going to come up with, whether it's like, software that's open sourced or just, I think a lot of how the internet's going to behave is going to be the way a lot of trends behave in fashion. Like, you can't copyright wearing, wide shoulder suits or flared jeans, you know what I mean? And that stuff goes viral very much the same. That's the original intention of the word meme before it was used for like the internet, was like it becomes very mimic. And I think that's something that's interesting that happens in culture that's very organic and very necessary. It's out of necessity that these things happen. The point is, those are questions that we will see be answered.
I guess when you said out of necessity, I think that brings me back to this post-COVID, right? It sort of allowed people to innovate, these ideas or these spaces, or began to digitize things more, right? Because we spent time home, everything was happening online. And so if we're spending half of our time or like majority of our time online, then it kind of makes sense if let's say right after this call, I have another call and I can just have a filter, and instead of me running to change, I can just put on this filter garment or whatnot, and it's easier. And I think another thing I like about digital fashion is that it's accessible, right, to more people. I mean, it's not so easy to access a certain kind of ball gown, by top luxurious designers, but it's easy to access digital fashion, and in terms of like body, like size and all of that. And so I think those are the things that I appreciate about it. But personally, I believe that the future is digital. I see it more like a collaboration between physical and digital.
Yeah.
It can't just be like, hard on digital, and then we have to find sort of like the balance. Artür, I see that you've got something.
Yeah, because I'm actually working on something, and I had like a written piece about it. But my only problem with digital fashion would be that it would remain an even higher luxury to some people, because not everyone has access to digital. This is where the problem.
I mean, I think almost everyone has access to a phone these days,
Yeah, but do they have firstly the access to the digital in that way? And do they have the access of understanding what it is exactly? Do you know what I mean? Because me, I'm Parisian, I work in fashion. It's happening in my world, so I get it.
I agree totally with Artür, and I have to admit, I do have some cynicism about it. I mean, my first thought when I think about digital fashion and existing in this virtual world and all that stuff, is it democratic as much as we would like to think? Did Instagram answer that in 2.0? I don't know. I'm still confused by it. And I kind of have this sentiment of, we ruined our world, so we're going to create a virtual one to ruin that one too. Like, so, I mean, I'm working on a project specifically about this with my digital avatar. And, you know, we spent months and months and months trying to like figure out what our angle was and how do we ideate on how we would present digital fashion and this digital world and, you know, being democratic about it. And what we found was we didn't have to go that far. We just had to look out our window and see. Just like Artür said, he's in Paris and he sees it, how it's affecting his day-to-day industry every day. And it's like, it wasn't that hard to see the cynicism there. But again, we will see.
Exactly. No, it's a cool experience. As I'm never against the innovation and seeing like what's coming up, but I'm always with the pros and cons because it's like having an ability to have digital fashion is absolutely amazing because some people are just introvert, they can't go out or whatever. It allows people to be, I don't know, if they're too shy, they will just stay home and do what they gotta do and still be living their life and building a universe. However, there is the real life and the digital life. Digital life is something that you actually decide to live from a certain time to another, when actually the real life does not have those aspects where you would just click on an option and just like, you know, switching on and off. So I think that digital, in a way, is one of the highest luxury I've ever met before. And I'm clienting big brands. I'm telling you.
Honestly, I'm over here just thinking about ecological violence and how our planet is being destroyed, and how I think sick it's making a lot of people. And speaking of isolation, you know, there's always two sides, right? Like to a coin, and life is paradox. So I think as much as it is amazing to have it as a tool for play, to be able to dive into fantasy and other worlds and growing kind of creatively, so important, right? The arts is crucial. At the same time, yeah, I suppose if it's helping us rethink fast fashion in a way, like that's pretty powerful as a tool. But I also just I'm going back to my like original stance about like how fashion can be amazing for self-expression, but also a distraction from nature in a way. So yeah, I think you guys said enough.
You've all heard about the new creator economy, you've heard about Web3, and obviously that powers digital fashion in terms of like NFTs and whatnot. Is digital fashion accessible?
Depends with who.
Do you find it accessible?
I think it depends. It depends on how. Like, to my point of view, there is different type of accessibility. There is the accessibility where you just open your phone and you can see what everyone see. And then there is another accessibility where you can see and understand what's going on. And I think that a lot of people think that because they seen, they understood, which is not the case. Do you know what I mean? There is so many people nowadays that have like so much pretension because they've just seen and they've been part of a little thing, and that they think that they are able to know what they're actually talking about, when in depth they just don't know. They don't know what's behind. They don't know how this was done. Why is this like that? They will just know what the digital let them perceive. Do you know what I mean?
Is Web3 accessible?
I will say again, depends, but it is because it's a matter of if you inform yourself, if you're really into it. Is for me, like when I'm saying like this matter of accessibility, as a person that did literature, when you say accessibility, it's something that everybody is able to either catch or imagine or, you know, think about. So everybody can think about it. But do you have the accessibility mentally to understand and go through it? Or will you just be superficial about it? And that's another accessibility. Do you know what I mean?
I'm on the same wavelength
Totally.
as Artür is, totally. But I'm going to be the cynical one again. I think it's going to be as accessible to the person who's has least access or knowledge of 3.0. It's going to be accessible to them when they have no choice but for it to be accessible to them, and that comes with motive. By who? I don't know, and by what? We can imagine really easily, you know, like we ruined our world already. Let's go ruin another one. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I live with my elderly uncle right now. I'm visiting family in Arkansas, and he's suddenly like on the apps and he's suddenly like QR coding stuff, and he hardly knows how it works, or it confuses him. He's a boomer, but he's forced to in order to function, you know. And a lot of, he's forced to because Walmart makes money off of it or his bank makes money off of it. So that's access, but I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing. It depends how, who, what, where, and why these things are happening,
Yeah, it's such early days too, right? Like I felt like Web3 was something that I didn't actually really have clear access to. I feel like kind of in the same way that the IRS makes it really complicated to understand and just get a straight answer. In this environment of Web3, it's a very much do your own research environment, which I support fully. I just noticed that there was a very niche demographic of people participating in it, right? And mostly people who grew up gaming on their computer. As a woman who was typically like outside, not growing up gaming, I didn't feel like there was like a lot of direct, there weren't peers of mine necessarily, especially females, talking about Web3. So that inspired me to want to dig deeper, and to ask, to be honest, and to gender this specifically, to ask the men in my life, like, what coin should I buy? What does this mean? Like, how do I get involved? And that led to something that's weirdly already kind of over, as we've all seen in the last like couple weeks with the news and how the market is going. But that doesn't mean that, of course, that iteration of it is over as sort of this big kind of boom renaissance that we saw happen. But of course, there's going to be more. I fully see and believe that there's more. It's just going to take on sort of different utility. And the way that we saw the Reddit avatars kind of weirdly have like a big boom recently as NFTs were maybe dying out. What Steve Jobs Birkenstocks sold as an NFT or with an NFT just like today or something for 20 grand or something silly. It's still happening, but I think that we're still in the very, very beginning of how we see the utility utilized.
I think that the language that comes with Web3, I would say it's not so accessible, depending on the demography or like the people, right? It's still quite technical. So as much as we want it to be inclusive and we want diversity, and the people who have managed to sort of like push through are doing really well. Like I think a couple of months ago, we had a guest from Nigeria, and she's a self-taught digital fashion designer, and she's managed to make something for herself, right? And from somewhere in Nigeria, right? But she did that because she didn't have a choice. And so that's like a form of access, but it's almost like you want to survive kind of access.
That was always my argument for NFTs for people who didn't understand them, was I was like, Jimmy, who has no money in Idaho, could, with $5 play the market smart. And if he's good at computers, end up with a lot more money or a lot more, whatever you want to call it, access or leverage, and do something with that, or have access to a DAO or a Discord and learn about things. I mean, that's the power and the beauty of the internet, right? Is it's like anyone from anywhere can hop on a computer and connect. I just think it's kind of funny what just happened and how many people like made out with a ton of money and played a bunch of other people, and it's all fascinating as a microcosm that I don't think we'll see again in the way that it happened over the last like year or two.
Really amazing point. I also wanted to add quickly that like NFT pretty much is like a medium that transcends all categories. So it's like anything can be an NFT, right? And that's what I like about that. But yeah, we really need to simplify the language. And I think education is really important. We need an episode, breaking down everything and explaining things, or maybe more workshops, because it's easier said than done. It is not that simple. I mean, and to be honest, it is not, because I'm in Web3, but more from the creative perspective side of things. But you need to understand some of the technicalities to be able to kind of move forward to the next thing, right? And so I think that more education is important, and we've got a lot of work to do in the space to make it as accessible, as inclusive as we desire that. So I think now I want to hear about what you guys are working on, especially like regarding this concept of digitization. And would you say it's maybe impacted your work in any way? And if not, that's fine. I would love to hear about your current projects and maybe something that you're working on if you want to share.
Okay, the pressure's on. I'll start. In all the different projects I'm doing, technology is honestly at the core of most of them, whether it's like editing visuals for a concert and using stock footage or digital manipulation to get a desired look. From actually, coincidentally, Salimi, you sent a link through earlier, that was 010 app. And I work art directing and doing a lot of photo work for Maisie Willen, who's a fashion brand, who did a collab with 010 app, made digital wearables, was really fun. And she and I, 2 seasons ago, made holograms for the show. So that was a world where, you know, last show we did New York Fashion Week, and we had obviously a fashion show, live models, a space, and we're like, okay, ultimately there's all this work. Of course, people want to go and have the physical experience, but we're like, maybe let's explore next season just doing something digitally, right? So kind of similar to the holograms that lived online, and you could load the looks from your phone and see them from all angles. It's funny how all this work goes into a fashion show, of course, and then it's distilled down to 30 photos on Vogue.com, right? So, and those are what live forever, right? So all that work of adorning this physical space, casting everything, making sure every garment fits a model perfectly, that their shoes are okay, the accessories, everything you can imagine. You know, for these Vogue photos that I could literally like retouch and manipulate if I wanted to in post, and that would be the image that lives forever. That's information, right? That's valuable information. So what does it say about how we're consuming and relating with each other? It is through this digital landscape more often than not. So so it's funny to, not funny, but, you know, interesting and rich in discourse, right? And that's why we're here today, I suppose, to unpack, like, you know, what it means when something is distilled down to just the image, to just the 2D representation, and how you can still get feeling and emotion and all of these sort of 3D sensations from a 2D image. So yeah, working with Maisie and working on some creative direction for musical artists, photo and video, packaging, design, and having a deeper desire to ultimately tie in more wisdom about life and honestly consciousness, and spirituality is a strong word, as I'm still trying to figure out how spiritual I feel, but I'm feeling like as I grow up, gravitating more towards these sort of like deeper kind of ethical questions that inspire me and move me in the work that I do. So kind of getting more interested in those things as far as exploring consciousness and exploring nature and the non-human living world, which is everything outside of us that we are very disconnected from, and I think is a root cause of suffering. So I don't know exactly how that stuff ties in, but I think like as an artist, as a creator, it'll find its way. So cross your fingers for me that
Fingers crossed.
It's awesome to be a part of this and unpack it all, as we're all consumed with so much every day. We need to take a break, but
mental health. Exactly. No, totally. You're making some really amazing points. Remembering to be human, right? And what makes us human is very important, and we can't lose track of that. You know, we need a healthy balance. And I don't know if Artür or Preston, you want to go next?
I am so happy because this year we are having this new title coming in the publishing, and the first issue cover is actually being shot this weekend, and it's gonna be all over NFT market. So I'm happy. I'm mega happy because it's the first time for us and it's the first time for me because I love challenges and trying to understand. And I also got offered to have my own coin. So she's gonna have her own
Wow.
coin. It's gonna be such a
Amazing.
funny thing. Like this publication is about accessories, lifestyle, and luxury in itself. Because it's to me it came like with my writings, I'm always trying to have like this sociologic type of point of view. So you will read my piece. You will have to read my piece to understand
Can't
why is this magazine
wait.
coming out. But it's a magazine that actually questions the matters of representation through objects and why is the society so turned towards the object to identify themselves as doing good in their lives or not. This is why we get an accessory luxury lifestyle magazine. So I'm happy about
Amazing.
this. And we also have this, I don't know if you had the time to watch my little series. We had
I did.
many episodes upcoming. We filmed. So I'm super happy. It's very funny because I'm not gonna lie, having magazine is not the funniest job. So you need to find where's the fun. And where's the fun is to actually film those terrible, stressful, dramatic moments that fashion is, because in the end of the day, it's nothing that deep, but watching it is even more funny. So then you start relaxing and appreciating a little bit more your job because you realize that one day you were there, another day you're here, you're only with nice people. Like my mom still does not believe me when I tell her like, oh, like my friend did this Mugler campaign. Like, look, she's like, until I see this friend at home, I don't trust you. Do you know what I mean? Like that's the type of thing that we are able. I mean, for me, I'm able to notice that I'm surrounded by people that have this life and activities that many people from the world would appreciate. But for us, it's just normal and almost colloquial to even be like that happy about it. Do you know what I mean? So I'm kind of happy and I can't wait to look towards 2023 and see what am I gonna come up with.
We will be looking out for all those amazing stuff. And I feel like I had a glimpse into your NFT stuff, I think. But yeah, I'm excited about it.
Right?
Yes. I'm excited about it. And Preston, you can go next.
Okay, whereas Claire was all about, and Artür is very much in reality, like, learning more about the environment and ecology and, nature and luxury and objects and the sociological, motives behind why we do it and all that stuff. I'm doing the opposite. I'm leaning more into fantasy. And basically, I just collaborated with Ryan Tricarton, the artist, contemporary artist, and we made a fashion editorial. And basically, the fashion editorial is we realized that Preston as a persona is a bit of a digital fossil, at least in the narrative. And we thought, what happens to a digital fossil that doesn't ever get to leave the digital world? And so it's a documentary about two young models who go to the digital, whatever, metaverse, whatever you want to call it, where they find Preston. Maybe he's thriving, maybe he's struggling. We will see. And I was really flattered that Ryan wanted to help me write this. And Versace provided all the clothing. So there's a luxury part there. But yeah, we wanted to explore like what is avataring? What is it when you're trapped in the metaverse? What is it when do you try to copy your real life? Do you like what is luxury if it's digital and what's a ghosty? What's a model anymore? What is a digital persona? If he's hiding in the metaverse. So it's a
That's so
comedy.
sick. That's so cool. So
Real
important.
big. It was kind of hard
Period.
to write like about like what narratives we want. We don't want to make it's satire, but we don't want to make fun or exploit anyone. How do you talk about the TikTok generation without sounding like a boomer? You know what I mean? And we just decided, you know what? We
Right.
are already in it. Like Artür said before, we're already in it. We're just gonna look out of our window and we'll do it. The video editorial starts with a Vogue 72 questions or 73 questions gone wrong.
Exactly.
And, we break not the fourth wall, because now everything's towards the fourth wall. And now we all are okay with being data mined and surveyed. We're going beyond that fourth wall, which is, I don't know. I think there's something, again, is it cynical? I don't know. But I think what really defines humanity, whether we're digital or putting it up for the gram or for followers or to be like surveyed by CCTV or by an OnlyFans audience, is that there's something universal about human that's just painful. And maybe that's what makes us human. And let's just explore that with all the cringe, ugly, and toxic there. I think a lot of times we act like we're better now. We're not.
No, ugly is in, baby. Come on.
That's
I know.
quite
Let's
deep.
lean into that.
Really?
Let's lean into that.
Period.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the
So
struggle is real.
that's what I'm working on. I'm working on the ugly.
Beautiful.
Well, I mean, sounds like you're all working on amazing projects. There's so much I want to ask, and I'm like, I want to ask about this and I want to ask about that, because you three are amazing, and I really love your perspective. You're real and you're creators and you're living it all. And I mean, it's amazing. But what I'd love to hear from you is if you have any advice to give entrepreneurs, or I'd say maybe young creators who are dealing with this idea of digitization, or should I say transition into Web3, to the Web3 space.
The first thing that comes to mind is like just now looking at how things are with the current internet and how people take in information. Media is very customized in some ways, even though the algorithm tries to figure it out for you. Whoever is like a celebrity in your world is not a celebrity in the person next to you world. Like we have a very customized point of view on how, because of the media we take and what we put out there. So I think the next step to that is simple. If you're on Web 3.0, have a community, have a fan base. It's going to be a lot of standing and, live for the people who stand you in your work and, and stand the people that you really love and appreciate. And I think that's all that matters. I think it's a more of a lateral interaction. And I think if there's any democratization that's going to happen in culture with Web 3.0, whether it's digital fashion or just ideas in general, it's going to be that. And I believe in that.
Preston believes in that. Artür, do you want to share any advice? Any advice?
I think my best advice is be nice to people. Be nice to people and support each other. You can be tired, you can be sick, you can feel down or what. Just stick to it. People's gonna see that you're sticking to it. They will appreciate even more and they want to be part of it as well. So don't forget that when you do a project, there is a whole bunch of people behind you that are already watching you struggling or you winning. So do it for you, but do it also for the people in the back because you're in the front.
Amazing. I love that. And I think today we have a perfect example. Clare is doing it for the people. She's not well, but she showed up. And yeah, I love that. Clare, any advice?
My advice would be to ask for what you want and be in communication. Like I always forget who I know and I'll literally be like, damn, what production designers do I know? And then the person in the room with me is like, me, what are you talking about? And I'm like, oh, okay, right. Like you do this, you do that. Like the moment that I started kind of just not like, what do you do to someone at a party, but like, what are your interests? What are you into? What do you like exploring? What inspires you? Those questions, I think, have led to so much and built kind of stronger community for me, and just the network of people doing similar things. And also don't be afraid to hit people up. The people that I meet for coffee who want to become a creative director, whatever it is because they're persistent with me and they're not afraid to circle back. They're not afraid to check in and hammer me down about when I'm meeting them. And I respect that. That's just a sign of their willingness. And I think on top of all of that, saying what you want to do, because words are powerful. So if you are a creative director but you want to be an artist, call yourself an artist when people ask what you're up to and what you do, and that's really like what then you'll become. I think with enough self-esteem or kind of self-validation, that's what it takes.
That's incredible. I think in summary, what I got is manifesting the future, that you kind of want to see. And yeah, y'all have been amazing. It's been such a great conversation. Where can our amazing community find you on your social platforms? We can go with Preston.
Yeah, you guys can find me on Instagram. It's for _, Preston Ken Zeng. I usually do everything there. Stay tuned. My editorial, The Ranch for Carton, will be coming out during the winter break on Raid Magazine. It's going to be on YouTube and TikTok. So it's a Versace story. So we will see.
We will see. Claire, you want to go next?
Yeah, Clare with no I, CLARE, Gillen, on Instagram, and that's my website too.
Awesome. And fabulous Artür. You want to go?
Me, it's like, let me act up. Like, you can just type my name on Google and it will give you everything. No, I'm joking. So you will just have to actually tap BAFP, and anything that goes with medias or channel, you will find me.
Amazing.
So nice
Thank
to meet
you.
you guys.
Yeah,
So
this
nice
was
to meet
fabulous.
y'all.
This was fabulous. Thank you all so much for participating in today's forum. And if you want to get more involved in our community, make sure to follow us on our social platforms. Twitter is NEWFORUM_NCO, and we're NEWFORUM.io or NEWLife.io. You can also join our Discord community to connect with these amazing guests and more. And you find all the links in the description below. Thank you again, and we will see you in the next episode.